Today, let's make some basic dungeon pillars with hidden magnets. One of the most valuable pieces of scatter terrain you can have in your collection are just basic pillars. These are great to place around caves or dungeons or a lot of other terrains to add a little strategy or complexity to your encounters. These can also add a little height to the table and give the illusion of a vast cavernous dungeon instead of just a flat surface or a flat grid that you might be playing your game on. If you've never crafted before and you just want to dip your toes in the water, this is a perfect project to start with. And you can make dozens of these in an hour. They're really simple to make, but I wanted to add another feature onto these that's going to make them even more modular and even more playable in a lot of other environments, and that is magnets. Now, some people love using magnets in their crafts, others don't see the value. I personally love using magnets. I just love how they just go together easily without having to snap anything together or glue anything together. I think it's just a super great way to get modularity out of otherwise kind of throwaway pieces. But one of the things about magnets that people don't like is how they can tend to fall out over time or not stay where you put them. Sometimes, since they're using such strong forces to stick together, they can stay together when you try and pull them apart. So I'm going to show you how to lock your magnets in place and also hide them within foam so you don't ruin that great finished look that you've got on the surface of your build. And in addition, I'm going to show you how to make a simple brazier using an ordinary dollar store tea light. Let's get started. We're going to start by modeling our columns. Now, these columns are really easy to make. I took 1/2 inch XPS foam and cut it into 1 inch squares and then hot glued them together. Then I sanded down the sides so they were all flush together. The caps are a little bit more involved. I made them out of dollar store Foamcore, and I just beveled the edges first with my utility knife and then used sandpaper to get a nice, clean, even, straight bevel on each one of the edges, as you can see here. So for this build, I'm using Neodymium or rare earth magnets. They're inexpensive, they're strong, they snap together really quick. They're just really great for this application. So what we're gonna do is we're actually gonna sandwich one of those magnets in between that end cap and the column itself. But to do that, we need to make an indentation for that magnet to rest in. And the best way that I've found to do this is by using the hot glue gun. Using the tip of the glue gun, just make a small indentation that's just big enough for your magnet to rest in. Next, we're going to attach the end cap to the column using a lot of hot glue. Now, as you're doing this, just keep in mind which way that each magnet is facing. Each magnet has a north and a south polarity, and that's going to repel or attract other magnets based on which way that it's facing. So if you make a lot of these, you're going to want to make sure that the magnets that you're using are all facing the same way. I went ahead and put magnets on both the top and the bottom of the column, keeping polarity in mind. Next, we're going to make a removable base that you can use to attach a statue or whatever you'd like to put at the top of your column. We're going to embed the magnet the exact same way that we did for the column itself, but this time we're going to align the magnet by attaching it to the top of the column so that we make sure that our polarities line up. I found that marking both the foam and the magnet with a Sharpie helps me keep everything aligned. Once you've hot glued your magnet in, instead of pulling straight up, slide it off so you make sure that the magnet stays in that recess that you've just carved. Now here's where some people's frustration with magnets begins. When you use it a few times in a row, the magnet has the tendency to pop out of that little cavity. But we're going to solve that problem using some leftover paper from the backing on the Foamcore. Just apply plenty of hot glue, press it down firmly onto a flat surface to get a nice strong bond, and then use a utility knife to cut out your base. That little addition totally solves this problem. Then all we need to do is add a little texture using a foil ball, and then we'll move on to the brazier. I've been using this kind of tea light with the removable base for months now, and they are perfect for crafts like this. I went ahead and removed the battery and the base and gave the top section a quick coat of black paint. To build up the logs in the fire, I'm just using some bark from my backyard. I cut up the bark into smaller pieces and put it in the oven for about a half hour to kill off any germs. Then I just used hot glue in some of the smaller pieces to build up the fire into the shape I wanted. I made a simple flame out of hot glue by waiting until it had mostly cooled and then shaping it a little with the tip of the hot glue gun. This might take a little time, but with a little patience and perseverance, you're going to get a flame shape that you really like. Next, we're going to move on to painting. I based everything using a mixture of black acrylic craft paint and Mod Podge. Then I painted the stonework using dark gray, a lighter gray, and a vanilla. I used a simple black wash here, but after it dried, I went back and hit the high spots again with the vanilla. Finally, I painted up the brazier using a gunmetal gray and a vanilla dry brush. And lastly, I painted the flame on the brazier using yellow, and then orange, and then red just at the edges of the flame. So as you can see, these columns don't just work as scatter terrain columns for dungeons or for caves, but they also work as great pedestals for displaying statues or lighting up a room using that tea light brazier. And that statue that I showed in the sizzle reel, that was just a dollar store wrestling figurine that I painted black. This is a really great method for hiding magnets inside of simple structures. Columns are really just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to what you can use this method to do in your crafts. You can use the magnets to make taller pillars just by stacking two together. You can use them to display statues, or my favorite use for these columns, displaying the almighty flaming hay bale, which I can show you how to make in another video. There's a link in the description. So I think this is going to be my go-to method for making simple modular columns in the future. So this may be one of the simplest builds that you ever make, but I can guarantee you are going to get a ton of use out of these columns. These are going to be some of the simplest and quickest crafts that you will ever do. You could knock out 10 of these in just a couple hours, I promise you. If you spend a whole weekend, you could probably knock out 100 of them. I don't know what you'd be doing with 100 columns. I'm not going to tell you how to spend your time. And if this is the easiest craft that you'll ever do, this one might be the second easiest in terms of like what actually looks cool on your table. If you dim the lights a little bit and put a couple of these down on the table, the whole atmosphere of your game is going to get kicked up a notch. If you found any of this useful, please let me know in the comments. In the meantime, I'm going to go make about 10 million of these. See you guys next time.